In this lesson, moving forward, I'm going to talk about how to create and demonstrate the creation of our drop-down menu. In the previous lesson, we created our navigation bar. Here, I'm going to show you how to create our drop-down menu. So here's our code from our last lesson. I'm going to continue right from here. But before I continue with a couple of things, I want to adjust my code here a little bit so you can also see. For instance, right here after our head tag is closed, we need to open up our body tag. Okay. So this is where our body tags open. And I'm going to move my HTML body tag right from here, and they go right at the bottom, right? So everything within my body tag adjusts. Great. So once I've adjusted this, I'm also going to enter a comment. So it's easier when you're coding, especially when you have long code, it's easier, nicer to break them down into blocks. And you can put comments over each block so you know exactly what it is that you're coding within that block. Okay, even though I did not start with this, but it's a good practice, especially if you're new to coding, for instance. It's a good idea to use those comments. So I'm going to use them off and on just to make sure that we understand and differentiate our code blocks. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to create drop-down menu, right? So let's, right after our navigation bar, I'm going to hit enter. And here I'm going to enter first just a comment. And I'm going to say navigation bar. Oh, not navigation bar. It should be a drop-down menu. And I close my tag here. And here's my comment. All right, next we begin our drop-down menu. So let me scroll down so you can see. So I'm going to start off with my first tag here. And I'm going to start with my class. And I'm going to say drop-down. I'm going to call it drop-down. Next, I'm going to create some links, okay? Because once you have the drop-down, obviously you need your anchor tags, href. And right now we don't have a link to a certain drop-down. So for example, if I were to add a drop-down for a shirt as a product, or shoes, or any other products that I'm about to create, since I don't have a link at this point, so I'm going to leave it as a number sign, okay? So nothing will happen. I can always come back to this and create a link. And then specify my class, and this is going to be drop down dash toggle, and then my data toggle goes here, and this is equals drop down, and then give an ID. And this instance, my ID is going to be text, and then obviously I'm going to say something, right? So in my first drop down, for instance, I'm going to call it, let's say, men, right? This could be a category that we'll later take a look at. And then I'm going to use my span class equals, I'm going to call it caret, and simply close my tags here and use the span tag. And then get rid of this anchor tag for right now and make sure I have my code correct. Okay, so just run through this. I have my anchor tag here, and at the end, let's close the link tag. Perfect. Get rid of this. Okay, correct this. There you go. All right, let's go to the next line. We'll make it even smaller a little bit so you can see the entire code. There we go. That's better. All right, next I'm going to create a list here again. And this is going to be my drop-down menu. And specify the role, which is simply just the menu itself. And next, I'm going to enter the items, right? So the things that I would like in my drop-down, this is where I can create a list. And depending upon number of products that I want to have, I can always create the name of the list and, of course, the link to it as well. So my first list, and then my href tag here, and then I'm going to just call it number sign. And my first, let's say, category would be shirts. That's what I'm selling. And simply close the tag, and then my list also. Or I can simply just get rid of this. All right, I'm just going to bring this back up here. All right, so here's my first list complete. And the good thing about this editor is that it shows me by underlining the list. So it tells me that, okay, I created a list, and then everything goes in the list tag, and it underlines both the opening and the closing tags. Okay, so this way we can keep track. All right, next I'm just going to copy this line here because it's going to be the same for the rest of my products in my drop-down menu. So I'm just going to copy this, maybe have 3 or let's say maybe even 4 products, right? So first is shirts. Next I'm just going to change the text here. So I'm going to say pants, for example, and then my shoes, let's say, and then one more product that I want to enter is, let's say, accessories, right? So we're selling accessories, and make sure my spelling correct. All right, great. So we created our drop down. We have a list, we have our link, we have our class created called drop-down-menu, and then of course our items that we created. Obviously at this point we don't have links to shirts, pants, shoes, and accessories. We'll create them later when we actually create those pages. And then our list is closed, and notice if I click on the UL, it tells me the opening and the closing tags for themselves. And also my list here, this UL, my div, my nav, my body so far, and the HTML, which is up here. All right, great. Okay, so let's save this and let me test it out. Go to our browser and refresh, and notice it says our menu where it says shirts, pants, shoes, and accessories. Okay, great. But notice I see something next to menu, which is quotations, right? So maybe we had one too many quotations. So let's go back to our editor and let's find right next to the men, right? So here it is. We don't want this. So this is an extra piece. So get rid of this, save it. Let's go back to our browser, refresh, and now it disappears. So it's good. Okay, so it's looking good so far. So in this lesson, I demonstrated how to create a drop-down menu with a bunch of products that we wish to have. Now notice if I click on any one of these, nothing's going to happen because we do not have the URL linked to any of these products at this point. What I also want to show you is maybe I want to change something to the nav bar, right? So I don't like this gray color since we call ourselves the Redstone Shop. Maybe I want to change the color to red or some other color. So first, let me go to my editor here. Notice on the left, I have my CSS folder, okay? So here, we're going to create a file called main CSS. And if I scroll up, in the previous tutorial, I demonstrated that we are going to link to a main style sheet. So we're going to create this main CSS within our CSS folder first, and then add an element and some piece of code that's going to change the color of our navbar. So I'm going to do this quickly so you can actually see how that's done. So let's go ahead and do this. In order to create our main.css, I'm going to go to the left navigation, and on my CSS folder, simply right click and create a new file within this folder. And I need to change the CSS and give the correct path. So it's the / here, and I'm going to call it main.css. Okay. So here's my file. It's a new file, so it's going to be blank. So once it's created, notice a new tab opens, right? So I still have my index.php here, and now I have my main.css. So here, I'm going to simply create a piece of code here. So I'm going to start with my body, and then where's my curly braces here? I'm going to give it some padding here, okay? To the top, for example. And again, you can play around with it. So depending upon your own requirement, you can take a look at what setting best works for you. So I'm going to give it 50 pixels at this point and use a semicolon to close. And then my nav bar, my curly braces here one more time. Maybe enter some comment here so it's easier for us to see and relate back. So whenever we revisit our CSS main file, so we know exactly what goes on. Okay, so I'm going to say something like background color, and I'm going to change it to, I don't know, FF0000. The reason why I do this because I may want to activate this later. Okay, and then I use my background color, and this time I'm going to use some 8,000 or 80,000 or something like that. Okay, the good thing about, again, Atom Editor is that it shows you that, okay, well, if it changes the color, that means this is the correct color code. You can always go online to the W3C standards, for instance, and take a look at the whole list of color codes. Okay, so if you don't know these, you can always open up your reference and take a look at which color you like to insert as your background color. So first is navbar background color is set to this, and our curly braces is closed. All right, so far simple background color. We need to reference this within our index.php navbar code, because otherwise nothing's going to happen. Even if I were to save this and go to my site and test it, nothing's going to happen. So once you create your code in main.css, we need to reference the navbar within our index.php. So let me switch to our index.php code and go to our navbar fix top. Right after the inverted commas, I'm simply going to say id equals navbar. This way it knows where to put the color to. Let's test it out, save it. Let's go to our site, refresh, and so far nothing happens. Let's see what's missing here. Switch back to our code. So our id equals navbar, which is fine. So this part seems correct. Let's go to our main.css. This is okay, but we need to save the main.css. That's something that we did not do. Okay, so now it's saved. And notice if it's not saved, there was a small dot here which shows you that the file is not saved. Okay, so we saved the main.css. Our index is saved. Just to make sure, now let's switch back and test it out. And we have our red, or whatever that color is, burgundy type color for our redstone shop. Now obviously this isn't gray, right? So I can't really see it. So what if I want to change some additional colors so I can see the redstone shop and then the drop down menu also? Okay, so let's switch back to our code and go to my main.css, and right after my last curly braces, I'm going to add a comment here first. I'm going to say change color to, let's say, white. Okay, and once I have it, let's go ahead and quickly create this background color. Again, you can use any one of these attributes, right? So I'm going to use background color for my menu here, and the white color is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all zeros. Put my semicolon, specify the color, and here is the all F's and my semicolon. Okay, let's save this. So we do the same exercise one more time. We have to refer this text within our index.php. So switch to our index.php, and let's navigate to our nav brand here, and then give the ID. And here ID equals text. And then of course our name stays the same. Save this, test it out, see what it looks like. All right, looking good. So we have a redstone shop, men, and then our menu. So in this lesson, I demonstrated how to create a drop-down menu. And I also showed you how to change the color using our style sheet. So as we're progressing, creating our e-commerce site, you can also see how we can create our CSS and then refer them to our index.php. And that's a good practice in programming. When you're creating your main code, it's always easier to reference by creating classes outside. So for example, if you're using JavaScript, you can create scripts, place them in a folder, and call them from there. Similarly, you can do the same with your cascading style sheets or any other functions that you create. You can always call them within your code. You can always create it within your code, but eventually if your code is too long, it may cause problems or issues that may slow down your progress. Okay? So it's always easier, a good practice, to create functions and call them within your code, or whichever methods you want to use, you always call them within your code itself. So practice working with creating the drop-down menu and your cascading style sheet. And let's move to our next lesson.